Hello YouTube and welcome back to The Zone here. Now, today ladies and gentlemen, I will have to make a thing about this because yesterday I was halfway through doing my reaction to the video we're about to do yesterday, but the problem was that I encountered my very first corrupted file. Now, fortunately, I was only about 30 minutes into the video when I noticed this happened, so there wasn't a great deal that we actually lost out of this, but what I'm going to do, just so we're on the safe side, I'm going to probably just splice together about 20-minute segments and then put them all together. Now, out of what I've seen actually of the video... Now, guys, if it's any indication of how long this video is actually going to be, I'll put this in perspective for you guys. When I was at the 30-minute mark, we weren't even beyond the first 10 minutes of the video we're about to see. 20 whole minutes of the video were dedicated to me literally completely, peeling and then ripping asunder what Chris was trying to tell us. Well, that's not entirely true. When I say rip, I meant critique and talk about the things that Chris missed out and he got completely inaccurate and all wrong. So, yeah, listen, and I've discussed this before, but when it comes to oration, when it comes to making speeches, when it comes to videos of this kind, Chris has not necessarily had the best track record. One example is that a couple of months ago, I did a two-part reaction to Chris and Greater Struggles, where he did a sort of a Lego-based animation between him and a character called Dr. Wolf, made by somebody else, but Chris felt the need to voice all the characters together, literally so he can wipe his own ass while also condemning everybody else at the exact same time. So we're about to see straight up whether or not Chris in the past was any better at this. And when I say past, I mean 2011, which, Jesus Christ, over 9 years ago. You'd hardly believe it was over 9 years ago when this was even being made. And we're about to just take note and just see exactly what happens. I mean, I say 9 years ago, I could already sort of my nose is sort of half forming a very strange V sort of shape already. That's just weird as hell. And if it's anything by the light outside, maybe heavens open up. Maybe I could be gone and maybe I won't even be here in 9 years. Okay, that's just a joke, guys. Don't worry. So let's just I'll go over the very short little bits of context I need to tell you guys about just before we begin this proper. First off, I had to skip 2:30 because he doesn't start talking until around about this point. Is that this is a quote-unquote autism tutorial. Is this meant to be... You see, first off, the title, it's pseudo-vague. A tutorial to what? To what autism is, or what is it? Is it just why not just call this Autism 101? It's a little bit more of a... I think it's something a little bit more straightforward, as it tells you the bare bones and facts about autism, and that's so... Maybe that's just... But you know what? Let's not get bogged down with very specific stuff like that. Let's just see what Chris has actually got to say, and then we can judge it for ourselves. So, if you guys are comfy, let's begin. Chris Chan's autism tutorial. Also, just in case any of you people were worried about interested, he used the I'd say he used the engine. He used the video game Little Big Planet 2 to orchestrate this quote-unquote tutorial. So, if you're wondering why the video is looking like this, then, well, there's your answer.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christian Winston Chandler, alias Christopher, and I am autistic. I functionally...
Can I just also, let's go with a few things. First off, anybody coming to watch this for the very first time, the audio is only because I think like the microphone was actually built into the camera that he had to possibly have used for this. So that's why the recording sounds like this. Also, he could have just probably have had his fan on the background, which he never ever turns off. And I'll just say this right now. I don't know why, but is this the last time Chris ever used the word Christopher? Because I don't think he's ever referred to himself as Christopher before, well, even before, but even especially after this. So that's fascinating that he wants to call himself Christopher. And he starts off by, straight up saying that he is autistic. No, actually, he states by saying he is high functionally autistic. And listen, I've covered again about the differences in his video about autism. So I'll just make of that what you will. But let's just see where he goes.
Autistic. In this animation, with Wikipedia facts and book diagrams, and in my own words.
Okay, here's already a first big problem we've got right here. Wikipedia is not a reliable source for this sort of information. Yes, you can, for the most part, get very accurate information about subject matter, about virtually anything. But the problem is that because I don't know if it's free for the public, but anyone can edit it, so anyone can say anything about anyone, and that means anyone could say anything about autism, and Chris, who believes stuff almost completely on face value, will take it and then run with it without even wanting to, That's something else you're going to notice right now, is that he doesn't technically reference any books or any entries or anything online. Anything referring to Wikipedia either, he doesn't make cross-referencing anywhere, so that's a pretty big problem, because most people who want to be taken seriously will go to the effort to showing where they got this information from. You don't just learn this thing by impulse.
Words and opinions. We will look into autism, what it is, possible causes, and treatments and cures, and how we autistics should be treated and respected.
Okay, so pay attention. Apparently this is what we're going to learn. Possible causes and effects, and how apparently they should be treated. As if, people with autism, were a league apart, or you're somewhat undermined by the rest of the populace. Again, bear this in mind, because when he does talk about the causes and all that, it's pretty obvious. Again, this is why you need to do your research.
In real life social situations. First, autism. What is it? In a nutshell, it is a malfunction in the neural development that impairs social interactions, communication, and restricted or repetitive behaviors. In the brain, autism affects many parts. Autism especially affects the connection between the amygdala, the social and emotional behavioral gland, and the cerebral cortex and maybe cerebellum, the logic and goal-making parts. The connectors between the matter is called...
Again, I don't have a problem with the fact that he's going into detail about this. It doesn't exactly help his case by the fact that the notes here are literally incomprehensible. But then again, that could be just owing to the age of the program he was using to make this. If he was to let's say maybe make a similar sort of animation using a different type of level design, kind of like Little Big Planet 2, maybe he should actually do that. You know what? If he wants to again be taken seriously, that's the sort of thing you got to do, because I don't have a problem with him going into detail like this. Like, again, that's actually rather commendable that he's actually going over specifically how you're affected and what the causes and effects could possibly be, because he does go into this pseudo a little bit later on. Just the only problem we have right now is that, well, you're about to see why in a second. Again, he doesn't reference or say where he got this information from.
The corpus callosum, which I believe is the most affected. In my theory, a cure may be found in repairing this major component of the brain.
You see, he says theory, but if you're going to do that, you're going to have to make references to, scientific cures, like possible vaccines. But then again, how would you create a sort of vaccine, or possibly some kind of surgery, or some kind of chemical agent, I'll say, that impacts the cerebellum into causing, neurological cells to be systematically repaired or to function. And this is a big thing I've got to say right now, is that, and this is something Chris almost doesn't seem to be able to understand, is that no, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing when it comes to people with autism. Everyone who has autism will always affect and respond very, very differently, because there are varying degrees of autism. There are people who are very mild and low functioning. People with Asperger's syndrome, can be very low and very high. And as you possibly could have already told by now, my Asperger's syndrome is so mild that, for the most part, people don't even seem to realize this, or just seem to think it's just, I don't know, really. It's just a lot of people are sort of like, half the time, a little bit more amazed to find out I come from the Northeast, as opposed to find out I had autism myself. But I don't know, that's just something I've had just adjusted myself towards when it comes to my autism, by changing my behavior accordingly. And what we're going to find out next is that, unfortunately, I wouldn't even know if a cure would be possible, because I've lived with Asperger's syndrome all my life, and as a result, I'm not even sure. In fact, most people, I would imagine, would assume that, would it make any real difference? How does this isn't? It's not as, autism is not something that is just going to fade away, but also everything you've encountered. It's just like life. It's almost like erasing a part of your life if you decide to get rid of autism, because, and again, this is something Chris really needs to possibly note at this point, is that even people who don't have autism are not the greatest at being in social situations either. There's a chronological difference right there. In fact, when you really look at it, everyone, for that matter, could have varying degrees of autism in a particular way.
But facts also state that autism occurs pre-birth, sadly, in mutated genetics within the chromosomes, which can happen when a pregnant mother smokes, binges, takes drugs or certain meds, and other non or real environmental factors, such as...
What are non-environmental factors then, Chris?
as car exhaust. Ladies, get off the drugs now.
Okay, few things I need to point out, because I got quite angry at this in the original video, so I may as well repeat it just verbatim at this point. My mother never, ever took drugs or drank whatsoever when she was pregnant. Not with me, not with my sister, and especially not with my younger brother as well. And you need to, bear this in mind. Despite that, I'm the only one who, out of the family, who has autism. Well, specifically Asperger's syndrome. So, as to why that's happened, as opposed to why my brother and sister never had that, it's pretty difficult, especially because of, it's not difficult, it's a little bit strange to understand, especially because of what Chris is about to say next. But it highly contradicts almost what he's trying to state in a strange way. But also, like I said again, I don't want to hear him imply for even 1 minute that my mother was irresponsible while she was pregnant.
Another factor lies in the father's age upon child conception. The mother's age is not a factor here. Dudes, have your children before 40 or 50?
Dudes, he's saying that he's trying to slander men who are trying to have kids that went over the age of 40. Which, again, considering the fact that Bob was about 54 when he had Chris, it seems like pot calling kettle, doesn't it? And also, something else you need to bear in mind is that my dad was 39 years old when I came into the world. He was 40 when my younger sister was born, and he was 42 when my brother was born. So again, let's just go over this. Chris saying have your kids before 40. So I was born before he turned 40, and I'm the only one to have Asperger's syndrome. So again, cases like that can happen, but it's because of cases like that is what sort of disproves Chris's idea behind, what he's saying about women being on drugs, which again, if that is completely untrue when it came to my mother. And also the thing about, dads being at that age. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people who, dads who are over the age of 40 who do have children who do come out to have autism. But again, that's so, but then again, there are also cases where people who also are under the age of 40 who have kids who have Asperger's syndrome or autism. Again, we'll get into that later.
Anyway, the mutated chromosomes can involve deletion, duplication, and or swapping. Scientists are still researching.
Swapping what exact is something that Chris seems to ignore. What does it swap? Does it swap genetics? But then again, how would those sort of genes not become mutated if they were in the wrong places? I'm not entirely sure what it is because again, Chris does not explain it, which is something you do not want to do. Again, if you want to give a presentation like this, you've got to get your facts straight. You've got to get your papers in order. You've got to get your story straight.
Common symptoms.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, I forgot. That part got, I don't know if it was bugged or whether or not he just decided not to state it again. This is why it's important to... This is why it's so important, ladies and gentlemen, to proof check your work and to edit or go over the entire process again to make sure that you've got everything you want to say in order. And I say this because, and I'll get into this later, but Chris is actually reading off a script that he probably wrote himself, which he probably never fact-checked or cross-referenced or added any footnotes whatsoever. And you're about to see what this can lead to and the dubious implications behind this as well.
Of autism include and should be observed to notice little to no eye contact, malcommunication with delayed babbling, unusual...
Yeah, but again, Chris, when should you notice these sort of things? This is important because, again, he does not seem to implicate that there's any age at which you should pay attention to these.
Gestures, low responsiveness, try calling their name. In that young age, they seldom respond if they have autism. As well as unsynced...
Wait, hang on, let me go over that one more time.
Communication with delayed babbling, unusual gestures, low responsiveness, try calling their name. In that young age, they seldom respond. Again,
well, I'll just say that, apart from the people who do respond from when, their parents or anybody else calls their name. And I might repeat that several times about this, apart from the people who don't have, impaired social interactions and who have autism all the same. And again, I again sort of can fit the bill for something like that.
If they have autism. As well as unsynced atypical vocal patterns. They also will have lack of intuition of other people.
Apart from those that do have intuition.
Lack of attention to social stimuli.
Apart from those who do have it. Again, you get the idea, but again, this is why it's... Chris sort of lays this out as a one shoe fits all sort of scenario where anybody who fits or has any sort of these symptoms must have autism in some way.
And little to no smiling. Imagine...
Apart from those who do smile. I friggin' beamed my entire childhood.
And imaginative play is often blank in autistic minds, but which...
No, I can't say that either. Again, now listen, again, just because I say that I do have that sort of like imagination, again, this doesn't mean it's the same for everyone. I just wanted to make that absolutely clear as well.
Training, they may be able to think in pictures at least, like the famous Miss Temple Grandin. By the way, boys are more effective.
Miss Temple Brandon. I have no idea who she is meant to be, but he just lists her and then never references anything about her, what she's studied in, or why she, or if she was even a contributor into the into looking into people with autism.
Famous Miss Temple Grandin. By the way, boys are more affected with autism than girls. That's just the way it is.
Right, okay. Guys, listen. Guys, can I just ask a very important question at this point? Imagine if Chris was like... If I was back in university and I was in a lecture hall and I was listening to Chris suddenly starting to give a lecture about people with autism, and he started saying boys are more affected by autism than girls. It's just the way it is. Tell me now, ladies and gentlemen, would you get up and leave if you ever heard something like that? I absolutely would just stand up and leave and probably never come back. Because let's just go over that. That's just a terrible, terrible thing to say. Because it gives the idea that men are the very specific sort of like not the demographic, but those are the ones that should be, you know, we should be giving more sympathy towards, as opposed to women who do have autism. And also, it's just the way it is. But that's not a fact. That's not an opinion. He doesn't reference anything about this. He just says it as though I said it, so it must be true, or I found this out, so it must be true. I don't know what brought him about to say something like that, because, again, he'll go on to state that he does have empathy later on, but it's when you say stuff like that is where people begin to think, wait, why on earth would you say something like that? Is that supposed to make anybody feel better about this? Because that's a terrible thing to say. So for whatever reason, we're going to continue.
Compulsive behavior, or a type of ADD, attention deficit disorder, is also common. In worst cases, self-destructive behavior such as self-cutting, hurting others, and bullying possibly may be apparent.
Apparently, bullying is only a possibility, unlike self-harm. Good job, Chris. Good to know that, again, this also would not rub people the wrong way.
Fortunate for me, I do not go into self-destructiveness.
Well, apart from when he does.
I do not hurt myself.
Apart from when he stabbed his own taint.
And I do not hurt others.
Apart from almost all the time.
The worst for me is essentially biting my fingernails. Sometimes. Feeling restricted is also common. Staying within their comfort zones with ritualistic behavior, and such. And with repetition in play, we may as well be walking around in circles for infinity time. And some of us actually do.
Yes, Chris, we know you do. This is why you've never ever thought about... This is like... I love the fact that you've never... Chris has only referenced, you know, biting his fingernails or anything like that. He's never once said in any part of this that he has ever, you know... This applies to himself. He's never said, these scenarios apply to me, because I felt like I've been trapped in the cycle for years, just working on stuff as opposed to going out. It makes Chris look... I think that's something if I was to make a tutorial like this, I would probably state that... I could probably list a few examples that I fall under these categories, because they're sort of like important to understand specifically what goes on in the mind of somebody who has autism, which maybe is something Chris probably should be doing, because right now he's just like listing these things off by saying, again, if you know somebody or anyone who falls under any of these, then they must have autism. And again, just the line about boys being more affected, it's just the way it is.
Parents and guardians should be very watchful and cautious of any autistic symptoms, as they can be obvious by the age of 3 years old. I myself spoke.
Yeah, because children go into repetitive cycles when they get to that age. I don't understand what Chris would list a 3-year-old would do that would be considered repetitive behavior. That's actually a really, really good point I'd like to make, is that when they go, I would actually love to know. Listen, okay, let me explain this. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome when I was 2 years old in the year 2000. But what I didn't understand is that I was 2 years old. I didn't start walking till I was like about 3.5. How on earth was I supposed to have demonstrated anything that showed repetitive behavior at that age? I don't know whether they went through like blood testing or I was like put under a scan. I don't know what the process technically was that I had to go to that made that showed that I was diagnosed, because these are the sort of things that, again, Chris just seems to think are very, very confused. Like repetitive behavior, I would imagine like 7 years old is when you will notice that sort of thing, because children will start to develop and respond accordingly at that age. So it makes Chris's information look a little bit confused if he's saying that 3 years old is when you'll notice this sort of stuff.
First at 6 weeks with the word monkey in an attempt at saying mommy. My vocabulary and speech grew great until I stopped talking at 1.5 years old, and I did not speak again until when I was 7.
Yeah, but the problem was, Chris, is that he actively chose not to speak. It wasn't because, he was mute by some, strained vocal cord. He chose actively not to speak for 5.5 years. Again, that's not really a symptom of autism. That's something that Chris actively chose to do.
The other infant symptoms followed in suit. A controversy began when they blamed mercury and MMR vaccines, but it was removed from all vaccines in early 2000, and yet the autism rate still grew over the decade.
Okay, so actually I think that seems like the first good point to actually kind of like pause, just to make sure I don't encounter any corrupted data again. So let's just, I'll cut and splice this up so we can get into part 2 just in a little bit. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, all is going so well so far. The first 30 minutes were not corrupted, so we're just going to get straight into part 2.
Going back to what you can do for your autistic child, you can do a number of things, but of course the most important thing is to positively, emotionally encourage them.
One, technically, wouldn't you want to do that for your child anyway, whether they were autistic or not? Also, one thing I just needed to state is that, yes, I do admit in childhood, but it's very important that you give them a sort of like a push in the right direction, and at some point you got to accept to let go and let them make their own decisions. Like, the problem is that when you become too attached to this sort of thing, is that it can almost make my shoulder's hurting so badly right now. I think I might have dislocated it again. It could be an indication that maybe it's a good idea to not. I don't know what I was talking about there. Just again, it's a good idea to, positively influence your child, but you've got to make sure, they are capable of, making decisions for themselves.
And give them hugs anyway, even if they don't want it.
Yes, your child could be saying, no, I don't want to be hugged, but just grip around them anyway. That could bring up more resentment than it's probably intended towards. My arm is now hurting so badly. I don't even know if I'm even going to be able to continue this, but let's try our best. I apologize if this is proving distracting.
They will feel the love eventually,
They will feel the love eventually. Okay.
No, I have. My mom never stopped hugging me. Another thing you can do with them is floor time. You get on the floor, you play with them. You should build Lego sets. I have my own city made.
Again, playing with your child. This does not seem like. As a parent, this just seems like, yeah, well, why wouldn't you want to play with your child anyway? It's just. This does not seem like. Whatever.
Made out of Legos. It was a very big city, too. It was pretty much an early version of my city of Quickville. I housed my electric hedgehog, Sawchew, and Rosechew in the comics I had drawn. I put all the bricks and pieces in the boxes under here, but they were over there, on the other side of my room. One big city. It was massive. It was great. And of course, there's also therapy, psychiatry, and special autism places. I highly encourage mainstreaming them.
Yeah, he doesn't list any of these places. The only one he actually does get into is talking about mainstreaming education for autistic children, which I will get into in a very short while.
Letting them try to fit in with the normal places, like high school and middle school. I fit in perfectly after I so did. But never ever send them to a mental institution. It's just wrong. It's a dark, evil place. I was almost forced into there once, but my parents would not have it.
Okay, now this is the point where I have to step in again. He talks about nearly being forced into a mental institution, and his parents would not have it. What I think actually was supposed to happen here is this was talking about the special educational programs that they were going to let Chris be a part of because of the severity of his autism, which I think was on display when he was like about 9 years old, if I can remember part 1 of the Chris documentary. But look, guys, I'm just gonna say this right now, because again of how mild my autism is. I'm gonna go on a record and say right now is that people didn't really seem to think that it was altogether that much of a problem when I was in secondary school, and you know what? For the most part, it wasn't. But one thing you have to also bear in mind is that I say my autism is very mild, but I still have it as little as makes no difference, and it doesn't. And just because something is mild does not mean it's not on display for just because of the lack of any other. Also, what you need to understand is that I myself know people who have autism that do go to special educational schools that are specifically inclined to support people who are to support the mentally handicapped as well as the neurologically handicapped. I don't necessarily want to use the word disabled in this context because autism is not a disease or it's a disability. Now, again, on the severity of autism, some people would class it as a disability, but this is a very varied sort of topic you can talk about because, again, I as someone who's speaking with autism myself, and there are millions of other people I can list off the top of my head who have autism as well, but not all of them are the same. And Chris again is an example of this as well, because my autism is not the same as, let's say, Susan Boyle's or Phantom Strider or the mysterious Mr. Enter or Dan Aykroyd. Well, all of us, all of the people I've just listed there, including, again, myself, all have autism, but it's varying degrees. And with someone like Chris, I would say it's pretty much on the border of it being considered a disability because, well, not just because of how this has affected and changed as he's got older, but also the behavior of he's also exhibited before is extremely should be scrutinized and understood. Not to mention, and I especially when it comes to stuff where he says he soils himself, stuff like that is. If it's something like that, where he's unable to control his bowels and all this is out of his control, then that is a very clear indication that he should be in the special education. And again, I blame his parents for this, because if he had received this special education, maybe things could have been so much different for Chris. Maybe and this is another problem I have to go over again. It was a different time when he was at school. Not that I imagine schools during the 1990s would exhibit string jackets that fasten at the back, but there must have been because I assume there wouldn't have been classes as to teach people saying that, you know what, maybe leaking a photo of your penis on the internet is not exactly a good idea, or telling people that you hope they die is also going to colour future employers' views in the future if they ever see stuff like that. I know it sounds obvious, but again, it was a different world nearly over 30 years ago. And I'm going to say on a limb here is that most people would probably suspect it should rely on common sense to not say these sort of things. But again, and especially when it comes to Chris, not everyone has common sense, or has common sense, but it varies so greatly that you can almost say that it's entirely optional. As well, I'd say Chris would be the sort of person to call common sense optional, because it varies greatly in the decisions he's made over the years. Also, one little thing I just want to say about the educational thing before we move on. When I was doing my GCSEs when I was 16 years old, I was given the opportunity to actually do my exams in a separate room beside one of the main halls. It was there because of other kids who had autism or had some kind of learning special needs. It could be dyslexia, it could have been anything else. I was given the opportunity to just work in a room with these sort of people, and it meant I had more time to actually do my exams and just more time to be able to be more relaxed and be able to be sort of more at ease than if I was in a main hall. Now, originally I did not want this opportunity because I felt as if I was being given almost an unfair advantage. If I reckon there would have been so many people who would have absolutely have loved this opportunity, but I wanted to not really be seen as anything different or special because of my autism when I was going through secondary school. So I really wanted to be in the main hall with everyone else. And unfortunately, my teachers, and maybe I should have put up a better fight with this at this point, is that the teachers said it was perfectly fine because as far as the educational board was concerned, that I could either be in the main hall or I could be in one of the separate rooms. And then I was told by my teachers and parents alike that I was given this great opportunity and you don't want to take this. And, well, to be honest, I sort of capitulated and just did my exams in the separate room. But the important thing is that I felt that I had some degree of independence to be able to make that decision. And unfortunately, and listen, Chris is not in that sort of category of people who cannot make decisions for themselves that fall in line with what we know as far as rational or normal as far as the world goes. But I don't particularly think that when it comes to the internet, Chris should. it's not so much that Chris couldn't use the internet, it's just that with everything that's happened, it has involved him getting involved, and because of his presence of what he's done. So, make of that what you will.
Anyway, on a more modern interest note, according to the Wikipedia article, the internet helps autistic individuals bypass...
What article this is, Chris does not list. No shocker.
...nonverbal cues and emotional sharing they find hard to deal with. They also apparently formed online communities and work remotely. Listen, from extended personal experience with internet socializing, I can tell you the truth of the internet. There are a lot of sick-minded, twisted, evil, stark, sloppy, gross, weird individuals out there. And you can never tell who they are from anybody else because they hide behind the mother skirts of anonymity that is also known as the internet. They go online talking to random people, deceiving, tricking, blackmailing, just so they can drag our once clear names through the worst mud, blood, and bodily fluids.
Chris, okay, well, I'll let him finish.
It makes me sick. Ugh. They are ungrateful, immature. They need to grow up. But they even range from the young, the teenage, even some adults. I swear. I had my own website for my science comics, but then they hacked them and took it away. I grabbed it back, but after a while I got tired of it, so I took the websites down myself.
If this is a reference to his ED page, well, how well did that work out, Chris? Not well, I gathered. Also, I don't think he got the entire idea of anonymity because it meant that nobody could trace you towards anything you were saying. That's why people create aliases online.
I also have my own MySpace and Facebook. Gone. They can hack your computers, your game consoles, laptops, cell phones, and maybe even your iPods.
Well, only if you give them the information they need to be able to do this, but otherwise, no, they can't really do that.
They just do not let up. I have been a victim of their ways. I've never socialized online again. And I screen my phone calls. I hardly ever answer my phone anymore. And I am emotionally damaged by them. It's just pitiful. Horrifying. Online gaming, on the other hand, is different.
Okay, so let me just explain this very quickly. Chris, the trolls would not have picked on deciding to, make Chris's life hell if this is why I'm going to say right now it was probably a bad idea that he put Solitude on the internet to begin with, because once people saw that, people were then... They would not just harass Chris for no reason if nobody knew anything about him. Well, then again, apart from, because that's really how it all started. It all started with Solitude, and then they found out about Piedmont Virginity Community College, and then pretty much it snowballed from there. So again, they would not have picked up that. They would not have done that if Chris had not put his comic online in the first place. Meanwhile, he says never socializing online again. Unfortunately, that's not. We all know 9 years later that that's just not happened, has it? Either because he himself talks about this stuff, but also because trolls and other Christorians will find out ways anyway.
The players, they just come and go while I accomplish my video game goals. No friendships are made, and information searches and shopping online is fine. It is the social websites like Facebook's and MySpace that are travesties. The only way to socialize is in real life. Fellow autistic people, I encourage you to man and woman up respectively. Go out into the real world and make real friends with full, great quality friendships. Do it now. Socializing tips and also a little bit more history on myself to be revealed in the following parts in the remainder of this tutorial. So stay tuned. Thank you.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. The only way to solve this, just go out into the outside world. That's the only way you can do this. This is the perfect solution to, you know, socializing, by just going outside and talking to other people. Now, again, technically some parts about that I do kind of agree with, that it's better to socialize, you know, face to face. But, and again, what about the people who cannot do that? What about the people who absolutely hate socializing to such a degree that they want absolutely nothing to do with the outside world? That's the point I just wanted to make. So that's the end of the second part. So again, I'll just trim this down to make sure nothing's being corrupted or anything like that, and I'll see you all in part 3.
Back in my teenage years at Manchester High School of Midlothian, Virginia, I really felt emotionally rich because I had a great number of friends. The closest and majority of were some sweet girls. My circle of gal pals was the best asset and blessing anyone could ever ask for. They understood me, and I understood them. We appreciate each other. We hung out, conversed, and hung out within our classes, like home ec and science and math and even English. And sometimes we would help each other out. It was the best of times, pretty much. And I even had a high school sweetheart like most would. And the quality throughout was great. It would be most appreciated by any person, autistic or not. Sadly though, about my high school years, of which I can only complain about, were 2 things, and I did not realize these till after I graduated. Actually, one I realized mid-graduation, but after graduation, I realized that I was naive on the subject of dating throughout high school. The mandatory sexual education class is good for after date number 3 and so, but how do we even get to date number 1? That's my question. I really would appreciate a mandatory dating education class alongside sexual education. Also,
Chris, I know this is being talked about to death, but I'll just, add one more voice to the people saying about why this would never happen. Number one, because if somehow there was, there never will, it would imply very quickly that there is a one-step basis for this sort of thing. And this is where exactly it's patently obvious that, having the special education classes that his parents should have looked into for Chris, this is where it does come into play, because it relies, dating education I would imagine it relies solely on communication and how to present yourself accordingly. And this is something that autistic people in general, I would say, apart from those who don't, have problems with. So for Chris to the big problem obviously is that it relies so largely on communication, and to have some sort of social impact, to understand a little bit about how the world is. And this is just either something that Chris does not understand, or he does understand and just decides to ignore. That it largely relies on communication, first by, building up friendships and then going beyond that. This is something Chris just needs to understand, and because, like I said, he just seems to think if he does A, B, and C, he will get to S, E, and X. But unfortunately, this is just not how it's going to be, because even if Chris did somehow think if there was some code or some kind of system that made him 100% understand of how to date properly, then, or again, this is the, actually, considering how much TV actually Chris watches, did it never occur to him that, if he ever seen any people go on any sort of dates, like, did he not think, just apply what they're doing there into his own, or why does he not just think of that for himself? That's my question.
Abstinence is a joke. The virgin breaker needs to happen before adulthood arrives.
The virgin breaker needs to happen before adulthood. Chris, you only become adult when the virgin breaker actually happens. Although, again, some people do say that, well, I myself agree that the difference between, not being a virgin and, actually being a mature adult, being an adult are two quite different things. You can not be a virgin, but you can still act like a spoiled brat. Chris is absolutely the biggest case in that aspect. But also, does that imply that Chris did not become an adult until he was like 32? Until he was like that age, did he still think he was a child? That's just scary more than anything. That's just straight up scary. I mean, did anybody think about telling Chris this? Out of all of the trolls Chris must have had, there must have been a few, I don't really want to call them white knights, but people who would have just tried to have talked to Chris, even probably Rocky Shoemaker or somebody from his congregation, or maybe even did he ever like talk to his parents about this sort of stuff? I'm actually going to suspect that he probably didn't.
Because being an adult virgin sucks. Even for us autistics and mentally challenged.
So what, does this imply that all people can think about is sex? Chris, there are more important things in life, in adulthood, than just sex. This is something that, most people, I would say, move on from, like, when they get, like, the age of 21, or possibly even before that. I mean, it's upsetting because these are sort of things that I learned, got over, and just sort of like since I was like about 19, and Chris is just, even at the age of nearly 30, he's still going on and on about this, as though there's nothing better in this world than being a man. Which again, well, not being, no, actually, I take that back. It's not that Chris wants to be a man. He wants to be a child forever. But, well,
And the second thing about my high school years that I would complain about is my high school graduation ceremony. It was a very depressing day. It was raining.
Also, because this would imply that, there are no autistic people who are asexual, when this is also not true, because I know plenty of people who are autistic and are asexual and have really nothing whatsoever. They want nothing to do with sex. Well, yeah, okay. I thought I was going to add something else, but no, that's about it.
Dark, it was dreary. Anyway, went up and got my diploma, and I did not shake anybody's hand. I mean, there were important people there. I did not shake anybody's hands. I just grabbed my diploma.
Well, maybe that just says more about Chris's behavior as opposed to, about not being grateful and anything like that.
Cried and ran off the stage. Went to a back room, set a table by myself for a little while. But then my best gal pal, Tiff, met up with me, and she made me feel a little better. We would love to see her again, at least hang out for a little while. My high school years were the best and most emotionally encouraging for me. But after graduation in 2000 and moving back to Lane Ruckersville, it was all downhill for me. My adult years suck, and I'm soon to turn 29. I left my heart back at Manchester High in Midlothian. I also graduated from Piedmont, Virginia Community College with a degree in computer aided drafting and design.
Okay, few things about this. One, he got his diploma after 5 years when most people would get it after 2 years. Also, he says being an adult sucks because look at the state of his life. But then again, this is what happens when he's if he thinks as adult, like, why does he try and change it, or why does he not try and do anything different? And again, I would not call Chris an adult. I'm just straight up being honest. Like, Chris is about as far removed from being an adult or being a figure of authority than it's possible to even be. Even more than our current Prime Minister. Yeah, exactly.
But that graduation went better for me because I did not have many friends back there, and plus, Marilyn Walsh just plain hated me.
No, she was doing her job, Chris. You should know that. No, he'll never know that. He was loitering and soliciting sex on campus, Chris. That's not going to go down well with the Dean of Student Services. Also, the amount of he's commenting about friends again, but they graduated. They moved on. Even when Chris got excluded for a whole year.
And obviously, I talked ill about her in comics I drew, portray her as a witch. She made apparent that it was illegal.
Well, yeah, also, again, portraying a character as a witch, that's not exactly going to go down well. What, do you expect she was supposed to be happy about that?
To find true love in the state of Virginia. And that Virginia was a state for virgins. She still tipped me off of me. Even after I apologized to her for portraying her the way I did in my books, she would not accept my apology, and she banned me from the grounds of Piedmont Virginia Community College. That's one hell of a thank you for an apology, or an apology accepted.
Few things. One, Chris, if you're apologizing, you sort of have to anticipate that maybe you won't get a thank you back. But you know what? You could have at least said you were brave enough to have, stated that, you were sorry for what you've done. Also, it couldn't have been that great of an apology anyway if it ended up in him getting banned. I'm just going to say that much.
Obviously, she did not accept my apology.
Understatement much.
I hope she gets fired. Period. And I also hope that the Game and Hobby place in Charlottesville burns to the ground, along with Michael Snyder.
Oh yeah, the Game and Hobby place, the place that also banned you because you were harassing kids, making a nuisance out of yourself, and, basically, well, yeah, exactly, he was just creating just too much drama at a place caused largely by himself.
And that's all my ranting for right now.
And also, I'm sorry, this really bugs me, but just look at the change in face here. Once he straight up says he wants Michael Snyder and the gameplays to burn to the ground. Just look at the state of his face when he changes it, because it's sort of it reflects reality a little bit stronger than it would in some of his other videos. Watch this.
And that's all my ranting for right now.
Fuming, and then he's just back to normal. Almost as if he could just turn these emotions on and off at will. Almost like he actually has control about what he could say. And again, also bringing up things from the past, things that Chris was entirely at fault for, instead of, illustrating why they banned him for what he was doing. Again, not making the right decisions here. Stupid people don't know that they're stupid. And again, this is why I do not call Chris an adult, because this isn't exactly a very adult sort of response, all things considered.
Now.
And with that, we'll conclude part 3. Backman, now we're up to part 4, and this goes on for a while. We're only halfway technically into this, so let's just ride this out.
Only about 10 miles south of Ruckersville, Virginia, is Charlottesville, Virginia. historic hometown of Mr. Thomas Jefferson, Mr. James Monroe, and Mr. James Madison. Lewis and Clark also started their famous expedition from this area. The expansive mall of downtown Charlottesville houses a number of small businesses, as well as the show-stopping Pavilion Tent and the Paramount Theater. This, as well as the Fashion Square Shopping Center, should both be social watering holes, but for me, sadly, they are not. Anywhere herein, even including the bars and events like Fridays after 5, nobody will even look or say hello to me. And of course, the internet reputation I have against me, sadly, thanks to those gross people that have taken my information and strewed it around in their misconceptions of weirdness, twisting everything. I've already gone into how bad that has affected me and how emotionally scarred I have been. Back to social life, the autism increases my shyness, so I hardly have even the basic instinct to just say hello to anyone.
So you're meaning to tell me that Chris is now that shy that he just cannot say hello to anyone? You're telling me he's that high functioning that... Guys, listen, I've met high functioning people before. People who are in much worse scenarios than Chris has had who can say hello. I do not buy that Chris cannot just say hello. Or why, if he's complaining about, a lack of interaction, well, you know what? I know it might be, it could be tough on other people, Chris in particular, but you're going to kind of have to, break the ice eventually, try and make some kind of effort to, stand in and say something. I'm just going to say that much.
Or even open up so easily with trust. I need other people to come up and talk to me first.
Right, okay, so apparently it's up to everyone, it's up to the rest of the world to, do the hard work for Chris to say hello to him first. Well, you know what, Chris, the idea is, what was it? Yeah. Treat others as you would expect to be treated. Well, you know what, Chris? It would say a lot more about you if you made the first effort in these sort of things. So, well, I say that, but do you reckon he's actually going to listen, or do you reckon that's just going to make any impact, whatever? Probably not. Or maybe, actually, I've never thought about this before, but maybe the reason why people have stayed away from him is because the smell would probably repel people. Because, again, Chris frequently showers, so you could probably take a hint as to what kind of pong he could be dragging around with him. I never thought about that before, but he seems to think all of these problems are just because of his autism, not the fact that his standards of hygiene are so abysmal.
Allow me to make it perfectly clear about who I am so that I am not misunderstood erroneously with the internet that's against me. My name is Christian Weston Chandler, high-functioning autistic artist. I am kind.
Despite the fact that he wanted, a woman to lose her job and for somebody to burn to the ground. Okay, Chris, say you're kind, Chris, and saying he's kind and saying the part about Snyder and Walsh, they don't exactly mesh together. And that's only scraping that's only the very tip of the iceberg. And this is the tip of the iceberg, and the rest of the iceberg is about the size of Jupiter. Just to give you an idea.
Caring, empathetic, emotional.
Well, yes, emotional. Irrational is also another word that rhymes with emotional that applies to Chris.
A good friend. A loyal friend. Cautious and wary. Trustworthy. Mostly honest.
Mostly honest, so sometimes he's not honest. I'd say it's about 74% not honest and 26% honest. Unfortunately, again, considering the information overload, you might say he was a little too honest. This is even going on today as well, so if anything, it could be the other way about, or it could be exactly that sort of ratio.
Do not like to lie. I would only lie to protect the other person's feelings of care and respect. I am not a monster! I am a caring, emotional, feeling, heterosexual human being. And I should be treated equally and respected as such.
You mean just him? So just him and not, other people who have autism. I remember when this used to be an autism tutorial. It's suddenly sort of like just devolved into Chris's life, hasn't it? Also, I just, at the risk of me sounding incredibly stupid, but Chris, people with autism, we're not, segregated from society. This isn't the 1950s or the 1960s where we had to sit in very specific parts of the buses, or we couldn't be in the same school with people, who were not autistic. We are not, or people who are autistic are not a segregated race. I can't believe I had to say that, but there you go. You see, this is why I should be... I should make a tutorial of my own, because just it would, oh god, again, if he wanted to be taken seriously, these are not the sort of things you say, i.e. you want somebody to lose their job, you want somebody to burn to the ground, and apparently you want to be taken seriously by saying that you're kind, and also boys are more affected, but that's just the way it is. That's what you don't say when you want to be taken seriously.
Sadly, back here in real life, everyone is in their own dang world. Snobbish, snooty, to even give care to one person who only has few friends.
Okay, again, apparently the idea of, treat others as you expect to be treated. Chris seems to think that... He seems to have gone that a little bit backwards, doesn't he? Also, he complains about having few friends. Well, you know what? How many would he like, Chris? Like 8? 25? Because he seems to, consider friends as just, a number at this point when he says stuff like that. It makes you wonder whether or not he actually appreciates having friends at all when he says stuff like that. That's another thing. He forgot to mention that he was unappreciative in his list of things that he was not. Well, he is, but he's not appreciative for what he actually has.
Within this city, as is Mr. Jefferson's hometown. Not even as much acquaintances. I feel invisible in public, and it's very sad to me. At least I do have one friend who cares about me around here. Unfortunately, she refuses to go beyond just friends, but I care about her just the same anyway.
Oh, that's good. He lowered his standards, even if, she just wants to be friends. Well, you know what, Chris? You shouldn't friggin' screw it up by saying stuff like that as well. I'm just gonna add that also to the ratio.
Because that is the kind of guy I am.
And that concludes part 4. We haven't got too much to go. We've only got about 2 more parts to go. And I'll see you guys on the other side again very shortly. Filthy bloody bastards. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, part 5. We're slowly but surely getting to the end of this. So, there we go.
Now understand, this is what I'm talking about for us autistic people. We are too shy by default.
No, Chris. No. No, we are not like this by default. There are people, unfortunately, out there who are shy, but again, this is not as if something that can be changed, or this is just how it has to be. Now, again, I say, for people who are more severely autistic, this is different again, but this is just, this generalization is just not something you want to do when it comes to, if you want to be taken seriously, you want to avoid generalization. You want to avoid words like default, almost like the plague. And the dubious nature again of having other people to come up to Chris to talk to him is more situated to his ego than his autism. I do not think Chris is that shy to start saying hello to people. It's never stopped him before. It hasn't stopped in the future, so don't see why 2011 would have changed either.
But on earning our trust, or if we feel comfortable or like the other person on our individual instincts, we will open up. And to start us right, we need either A, the other person to approach and talk to us upon their own will, or B, have our own trusted friend or family introduce us to other people of our respective ages. In this scenario, it was a great match for me, for A, she is a single woman without a boyfriend.
So apparently, in order for Chris to...
B, she is pretty and easy on my eyes. And C, this woman I could feel comfortable with and feel a good and honest aura from her.
So apparently Chris's standards are as follows. He wants other people to talk to him. He wants everybody else to make the first effort on his behalf because Chris is too lazy to do so. Also, Chris will only talk to somebody if they are female, they are single, they are attractive, and apparently they appear trustworthy. Chris, this means if you are male, if you are in any which way, to Chris, I should say, ugly or not look as good as he would imagine you to be, and especially if he feels that you look in any way suspicious, Chris will become increasingly paranoid and would not want to... Maybe this is why Chris absolutely... Nobody wants to talk to Chris, because Chris will unilaterally look deeply suspicious of anybody he wants or thinks is going to communicate with him. This could range from his homophobia, his phobia against colors of skin. This could range from a whole wide of things. Again, Chris is wondering why nobody wants to talk to him. Also, again, the thing about his hygiene.
From this, a good friendship and hopefully a long relationship will stay between us for the long time. Do not bring me down here, naysayers and haters. Let's look at a few other scenarios similar to opposite results.
So apparently, if you look anything like that, you are considered illegible and Chris will not give you the time of day. Now, again, I'm just going to say this again, because I know I've heard about people harassing Gino Samuel for a second, and people also harassing Gibby, and I think also harassing Dylan and other people who've commented on Chris Chan before. But I'm just going to say this right now. Are you absolutely sure we're not just taking things out of context? Are you sure we're not just picking on Chris because he has autism? No. That's not what we're doing.
Obviously, most women, easy on my eyes, good-humored, sweet, pretty, black, white.
I also love this part. I mean no personal offense whatsoever to any individual, group, or person. Not everyone is going to see it quite like that, Chris. I'm just saying.
Asian, Christian, Jewish, Buddhism. I have no care about skin color or religion. Whatever. I will be kind to all of them, respectful and
Not what you said when you called Michael Snyder a child molesting Jew.
welcoming them, to have them in my circle of friends. Lesbians too. Just don't get on my bad side here.
What, just lesbians? You don't want to include gay gay males, or bisexual, pansexual, transsexual? You don't want to include any of them, Chris? Lesbians are just fine? Okay, I see.
Men, my own kind, on the other hand, I will feel most hesitant towards, because I have had fewer male friends in my life, and I have had mostly bad experiences around them. Plus, and this is very important, in my autism tests, it was found that I get along better with women well over men.
That makes absolutely no sense. So, just from that, Chris has gone with the idea that he gets along with women better than men. Screw what the papers say. Has he actually tried, or has he just accepted this at face value and just... Oh my god. I think that's just... That's just fucking ridiculous. And again, listen, guys, when I was in secondary school, I was at an all-boys secondary school. I had to work and get along with males by default. But here's the difference. I got along with them. We were fun. We were great friends for pretty much those 7 years. If anything, I find it the other way about. I find it much easier to talk to blokes and that than to talk to women. Not because I couldn't talk to women, but I just talk to blokes better. It's just, and again, this is where I bring it back to again. It's my autism is not as bad, but I could still form relations and all that. It's because, I don't do the things Chris does. That's possibly why. It's also because I don't have double standards.
And considering my life experiences and my own opinion, I totally agree with that. If the individual, however, offers a friendly gesture and does not make me angry or make me feel most uncomfortable or ill at ease, I will be willing to give him a chance and welcome him as a friend and nothing more.
Oh, really? How big of you, Chris?
However, going back to the mean people of the internet, upon meeting one of them in real life, and I will be able to recognize them, I'm sure enough, at least with basic instincts, I will not hold back my endured rage. Just ask this crying Clyde.
He is not a monster, he says, and he is so brave that he just picks fights with people. And also, what is this way he fights as well? Let me just this is how Chris fights. Just I'll give you guys a visual representation about how he fights. Just watch this, guys. This is actually how he does it. Right. Let me just. That's how he fights. Ugh. He fights like some kind of like Paper Mario if he was a cat. It's like watching it's like watching Paper Mario fight in real life. So with that out of the way, let's just that's wrong one there. Display video capture. And, okay, so now that that's sort of like out the way. Also, like I said, how brave it is of Chris to just pick fights with somebody as opposed to, you know, try and work. You know what would have actually have made Chris's scenario any better? If at the end of Solitude number 10 with the Aspidistria 4, instead of, you know, condemning them to death, Chris tried to show some kind of virtue and say, you know what, they are guilty, but that doesn't mean they're not perfect. But then again, neither are any of us. So we shouldn't be casting the first stone at them because we are with sin ourselves. That could have been a great way to turn it around and to show some kind of mercy to the Aspidistria 4. But as we all know, Chris will not even think about trying to be forgiving. Instead, he'll go through the more monstrous and more barbaric response of slaughtering them with hideous cruelty. Chris had every opportunity now and all the way back then to try and turn it around, but he couldn't. Not because of his autism, but because he kept making every single wrong decision because of his irrationality and his lack thereof of common sense and of being, you know, a monster. Not a sociopath, not a psychopath, but something worse than that.
Physically and mentally challenged individuals will vary more. Good results if they are easy to look at.
Good results of mentally ill disabled people are good to look at. Again, Chris, this is absolutely why. This is 100% why nobody would... Not everyone would be happy about being called like that. Not everyone will agree on what Chris is going to say. Because, like I said, it's just the way it is. No, do you reckon anybody would want to have anything to do with Chris after that? No. No way.
If they are able to speak clearly, even slowly, that I can easily understand them.
I mean no personal offense. Again, not everyone is going to agree with that, Chris. Not from how other people might see it.
And now the other side. Whoa, back off. I'm spooked if you are ugly.
Well, you better pray that you're not ugly, otherwise Chris will just back away.
Seriously disfigured, especially in the face. That you mumble more than you speak. You're hard to understand at all. It is nothing personal, and I apologize.
It is nothing personal, I'm just that ill-tolerant of anyone else who is different through no fault of their own. And also, can you smell that? I could smell Chris from here. And I live like nearly some 12,000 miles away. Well, 12... Maybe it's like 8,000, but I could smell it.
Apologize for anyone who feels at unease after hearing what I just said, but it's just the way I feel. That's all.
Well, sometimes, Chris, that's not the best. Some things are best left unsaid, and this is something Chris has never once thought about. He was probably told, but he never once thought about that.
Oh.
And let's just continue. I don't think there's much left to go from.
At this point, you would think I would be a happier autistic person, right?
No, Chris, it's not possible to be happy when you've got that much spite riddled away in your body. Nobody can be that happy. No one.
Finally having the woman of my life to be here by my side and care about each other and such for the rest of our lives. But the truth is, for real, Mick and I, we don't hang out in person as much as we should be. Only fun conversations.
It's probably for the best, Chris. because again, we don't have mixed perspective on this, but I'm going to suspect Chris must have said or done something to have, rubbed Mick the wrong way. Not a euphemism. That was just a metaphor, guys. Don't worry.
And the few times we did hang out. And she does not know that many people here in Charlottesville. All things appreciated in our friendship, Mick is just too busy to help me best.
Well, yeah, again, Chris, you have to understand, she's probably an adult. She's probably in her mid to late 20s. She has her own life. She has, maybe a job, responsibility, a family as well. She has other things going on in her life. Chris is not the center of the universe.
Another thing about us autistic people, we do not like to be alone, quote-unquote, 24/7. We need the emotional support of a true friend constantly and in person.
Constantly. Like pandering. I agree. Listen, again, I agree that it's not nice to be alone 24/7, but constant pandering is going to put you off the idea completely.
Also, on another note, apparently government funding goes more towards physical health over mental health. The brain is a part of our body, and not just any part, the most vital part. Why don't we treat the rest of our body parts, which essentially alone are brainless, better than our one actual central processing unit?
Well, if Chris ever gets something like bone marrow cancer in the future, I don't particularly think it will come as a surprise to him when he realizes that, he'll come out on Twitter saying that, I'm sick, why isn't there more funding for this? He's just looking for something else to blame at this point, isn't he?
That is not brainless. As a part of the body, funds should be equally distributed or equally divided between both physical and mental health. So then the cures for mental illnesses, including autism, can be found. It just makes me feel sad and furious at this time. I, for one, actually appreciate a true and full good quality friendship. Yet,
you had that before, Chris. She was called Megan Schroeder, or it was something like that. And how did that end again? Well, we know how that ended. So, again, Chris, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Chris does not strike me as the sort of person who would appreciate it unless he could see anything else. Because he constantly asks for women, he wouldn't be happy with a man being his best friend, because it would allude to the idea that some people thought he was gay when that's absolutely not how it is. But Chris is that easy to rile up. It is so simple to do it that he will spout whatever rubbish, homophobic slurs or whatever, to prove that he isn't, because apparently he thinks we only care for that and that alone.
In a world full of sick-minded people, one can only detest. I feel so paranoid of a number of people. And I feel uncertain of most anyone I could ever trust or feel at ease around. The social phobias I can no longer tolerate. Which is why, unlike the autistic people who pitifully accept it as a forever lasting curse.
What is he even on about at this point? What about apart from, again, the people who do not see it at all like that?
I, for one, seek a cure.
Seek, you mean demand a cure?
On the day, a resolution to reestablishing all connections in our brains with thorough corpus callosum repair and such. I, Christian Weston Chandler, will be there among the first in line to take the life-changing...
Well, again, how noble of Chris that he wants to be the very first candidate to have his autism cured, believing that's just going to solve all of life's problems. Do you reckon, I've just had an idea, guys. I reckon if they did somehow because they never will, because that's not, again, autism is not something that can be cured, because neurological conditions are not really curable as far as my knowledge goes. But the fact is that, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know what exactly Chris would say or not about this, but I reckon if somebody, if there was a cure for autism in some way, but you know what, I've said it before and I'll say it again, autistic or not, I would still be the exact same person in here and in here. And nothing would have changed about that. So, you know what? I wouldn't want to have the change either, because again, what difference would it make if I was or I wasn't? I would still have been the same person. And also, again, if Chris apparently was, and again, similar with Chris, if his autism were, if he was cured of autism, who's to say he wouldn't still be the same person again? Because his scenario wouldn't, his situation right now wouldn't be changed. He would still be one of the most despised people on the internet, and he would just continue to make mistake after mistake after mistake. And he won't even be able to fall back on his autism to, you know, when he constantly begs for sympathy. So, yeah, that's what I've got to say about that. Also, even if I really wanted to get my autism cured, I would, I don't particularly think a cure would be that sort of thing, but if it was, I would have, you know, wanted to be at the back of the line. I would have wanted to be more noble and ignominious. Ignoble. I think that's how it is. Ignominious in letting other people, probably more deserving of me, and probably who have more severe cases to go forward. That's the sort of thing what I mean by empathy, which Chris does not seem to display when he says he will be the first in line.
Autism cure I have desired for so long. To establish a quicker, more socially active mind, a great sense of self-esteem, a great sense of self-reliance, a great sense of self-confidence, total independence, and freedom from the thorns of autism of any kind or sort.
Wait, let me finish.
The life only an autistic person can ever dream of. I am Christian West.
So apparently autistic people cannot be independent. Apparently autistic people cannot have self-confidence. Apparently also autistic people cannot have a sense of self-worth. Is that what Chris really believes in? Because if he did, if that's what he believes in, then, you know, he might have wanted to have said it. Because, and again, I'm just going to close out this next part with this. I knew a kid in secondary school who was diagnosed with autism just like me. Well, I think he was also on the spectrum because, well, I won't go into details too much, but guess what? Despite years of bullying, years of just making wrong decisions here and there and through other things, because, like I said, with me, I made mistakes when I was in secondary school. I don't want to give the idea that I was perfect or anything like that. I wasn't. But it was the fact that, you know what, this other kid made poor decisions as well. But you know what, despite all this, despite all the wrongs that this guy did, not only does he have a job, not only is he not only does he have his own place, not only does he have a partner of his own, but you know what, and I talked to him for the first time in years only a few weeks ago, and you know what, super chilled, super cool, super laid back, absolutely fine. So, like I said, just if this is not what Chris intended to say, then you know what, he probably should have said something different. That's just the case I'm just gonna have to make right now, because I don't want to be too mean on Chris about that, because I'm pretty sure I kind of understood what he was trying to go for, but there are better ways of wording this. And again, what happens when you don't edit what you're trying to talk about? Also, what kind of tutorial is this meant to be, where he spent nearly 2/3 of it talking about his own life? And by the way, guys, we're not even at the end of this, but I'm just gonna have to pause it right now again because my brother wanted to use the mic for something. So I'm just gonna let him, and we'll call it there for now. But we will get into the final part within a couple of minutes. So I will see you guys in the final part. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and it's now time for the final part of Quickie's autism tutorial. It's not really a tutorial, more like just bragging rights or feel sorry for me. A Quickville production. So let's get into the final part of this.
And Chandler, and this has been an autism tutorial.
No, it hasn't, but you already get the idea.
And have a good and safe day. After watching,
Anyway, here comes the final part.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, because apparently you decided you wanted to watch this part
more out of the fact that I hate myself more than actually wanting to finish this.
After watching the autism tutorial, we have a special guest for you today. Please put your hands together for a reasonably facsimile of Mr. Hans Asperger.
Note this is a satire with facts from the Wikipedia's autism page. Unfortunately, what you're about to see does not reflect that. See, here comes what's meant to be Austrian physicist and, child psychologist and pediatrician Hans Asperger. And just look at Chris's face there when he turns away. He fucking cannot stand this man. And as you're about to see right now, for the most ridiculous and nonsensical approach you could possibly imagine. And like I said before, everything that contradicts what he said about not being a monster.
I'm your host, Christian Chandler, on this short talk show. And this is Mr. Hans Asperger. Now, let's talk about him for a bit. Now, apparently, Mr. Hans Asperger, from the Vienna University Hospital in 1938. Oh, how recent.
Yeah. What do you mean, how recent? 2000. This was, again, remember, this was made in 2011, so that would have been like nearly 73 years later. That's not exact. I wouldn't exactly call a 73-year difference recent, but whatever. He's the one who made this, not me.
You gave a lecture in Germany on autistic psychopaths after investigating a mild form of autism. Isn't that right, Hans? Yeah.
Great.
And also, apparently, this separate diagnosis...
Grade A response, and not for the fact that Chris literally just wrote his own dialogue for Hans Asperger, who isn't here to defend himself because, he's been dead since 1980.
As it is quoted, was not recognized until 1981, only 1 year before I was born. Although coined...
Not entirely sure what he was trying to apply from that, but okay.
From your name, Mr. Asperger, apparently a Mr. Leo Kenner took the study much further and established the term early infantile autism. Do you applaud Mr. Kenner for his work? Yeah. I see. Now, it
was obvious Mr. Kenner took the work further. Like, it was first Hans established this pattern of behavior, and then somebody went further with it, and somebody probably took Kenner's work and took it further again. It's called development, and it's just how it's supposed to be. Only that's literally how it's supposed to be, because you can't just stop when you've founded this pattern of behavior. or at least given it a proper diagnosis.
My feeling alone, possibly mutual with others, the name Asperger, it strikes me badly, and I feel offended just by hearing the word.
You know, considering I'm on the Asperger's spectrum myself, I don't exactly know what Chris is trying to, again, apply from this. Again, the very people who realistically should be on Chris's side throughout this entire tutorial, he's now turning his attention and almost forcing a shotgun into the face of those who actually do have Asperger's. Also, I should possibly point out is that he feels offended at the word Asperger's. Maybe it's because of the way he pronounced it, Asperger's. Well, you know, I reckon that I'm not entirely shocked that, well, why no one's ever tried to give him the nickname Asperger's, because, let's face it, he sits down more often than not, and he's never gone up to actually do a day's work. Also, what was that I was going to mention? Yeah, again, Chris, you do realize that Asperger's, it's not the same as saying the N-word. You do realize that, you know, there's a big difference, and you're getting offended. Offended by what exactly? I don't understand.
Do you feel I have the right to my own opinions and feelings as an individual person, Hans? Yeah. Thank you very much, good sir.
Well, yeah, Chris does have the right, but that doesn't mean the rights are right, if that makes sense. I mean, what exactly good is it to hold just this against people who have Asperger's? Like, how is it their fault? And also, if Chris ever gave you know, a diagnosis towards anything that, and he wanted his name put on it, do you think anyone would be, you know, diagnosed with Chandler syndrome? Actually, let me just do a quick check. I think, yep, we've got the time to find out whether or not Chandler syndrome technically is a thing, because it could be given to cases like these. Oh, would you look at that? There is something called Chandler syndrome. Chandler's syndrome is a rare eye disorder within the endothelium. The single layer of cells lining the interior of the cornea proliferates, causing corneal edema, distortion of the iris, and usually high pressure in the eye, glaucoma. Huh. So, yeah, technically there is such a thing called Chandler syndrome, and it's related, actually quite ironically, is that Chris's half older brother, Dr. Alan Chandler, is an optician himself. That's I wonder if he actually had any. I know he probably may not have had anything to do with it, but maybe he worked on it himself. And how ironic! Like, if somebody must have asked him, "Was it named after you, Dr. Allen?" That I wonder if that's ever happened.
Now, do you feel
Actually, I'll tell you what, I just need to turn this up slightly.
bad about having a name that sounds like a bad cut of cow meat?
Again, makes absolutely no sense, and also, it's down to the way he's pronouncing as well. It's not pronounced Asperger's, it's pronounced Asperger's.
Yeah.
And again, he just Chris wrote his entire, all of Dr. Hans Asperger's dialogue, and it's entirely one word. In fact, it's 2 letters. And Chris, because what, did Chris find this funny, or were people expected to laugh at this? Laugh at somebody who has credentials and, you know, actual degrees, and did copious amounts of research into the very disorders that Chris has, and this is how he wants to portray him? He's spitting in the face of people who have Asperger's, spitting in the face of the people who have autism themselves, also at the people that, you know, he offended and wish were dead. And again, I've listed the problems before, but you're sort of like getting the idea at this point.
Do you feel that I, Christian Weston Chandler, do not deserve any blame or punishment for having an opinion of a single word, such as Asperger?
Well, no, well, again, Chris, punishment, of course, like, if let's say if Chris was in court and he suddenly called the judge the N-word or anything else derogative, yes, absolutely you would receive punishment. So, in just that one instance, because I don't need to go you realistically don't need to go any further than that, yeah, he would absolutely get punished. Because remember, Chris, this is the real world. This is not a game.
Yeah. Do you have a general understanding about how I feel about you now? Yeah. Are you positive you really understand how I feel about you, Mr. Hans Asperger? Yeah. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah? Yeah.
No point looking at my wrist here. It's got no second hand.
Yeah? Yeah. Baka! I feel dislike towards you for selfishly putting your ill name in association.
So apparently, okay, right. Let's just take this back 10 seconds and we'll go through this one step at a time.
Baka! I feel dislike towards you for selfishly putting your ill name in association with autism. And with a name like Asperger, I feel it only makes us autistic kinds sound even worse. Asperger's. You should have left it as it was. Autism is autism. And in your research, you linked it up with psychopaths. I feel even more offended at that. Now get out of my sight. Yeah.
Just look at the again, the difference in Chris's face when he's just saying "get out of my sight" and now just looking at the camera. It's scary how he flip-flops like that. Also, putting his ill name in association with autism. I reckon if Hans Asperger was called anything else, Chris still would have had a problem with it. I can guarantee that. Other things I kind of like wanted to point out is that sound even worse. Well, you know what? I reckon if I propose the question to Chris that I have Asperger's and do you have a problem, because I've seen several videos where you think people who have Asperger's are simply stealing your light. Have your opinions ever changed about that? Also, again, slapping a sadly deceased actual doctor who has done copious amounts of research and actual work into this, and Chris's response is to slap him and give a biased interview, if you could even call that an interview, and tell him to blatantly get out of his sight. I'd rather be referred to as having Asperger's syndrome as opposed to having Chandler's syndrome. Mostly because, Chandler's syndrome actually has a thing. But could you imagine his ill name? Like, no. If somebody put their name in association with Chris, that would be an ill name. Not the other way around. Just Dr. Asperger probably must be rolling in his grave at this moment if he knew about this.
I do apologize for that rude outburst, folks.
He does apologize. Chris, I don't buy it. Chris, you have absolutely no sense of guilt or shame whatsoever, because if you did, you might have realized that this was not the most mature response in the world, and it most likely should have been that you should never have done this.
But then again, that was just the way I felt and have been feeling about the word Asperger since I first heard it a few years ago. It is my second least favorite word, where my first least favorite of all time is naive.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm not angry at Chris. I'm just really, really disappointed.
Again, I apologize if I came off as bad to anybody, made them feel bad for the way I acted. But then again, I do get emotional and carried away sometimes.
You know, again, I get emotional and carried away too, Chris, but that doesn't mean I'm without self-control. It's called using your brain and realizing that there's no point to me saying this, because do you think Chris will listen? I doubt it.
Thank you for watching, and have a good, safe, and blessed day.
And Sonichu is now just beating Hans Asperger. Good job, Chris. You try to apologize, and then you have this happen. And right, anyway, so that took way longer than it should have, and I'm done. I think I've said everything I needed to have said, so I think I'll just leave it there. If this was meant to be a lecture, I would have left a long time ago. And if I was the lecturer, I reckon I could have written something better than this in my sleep. Maybe it's better if we just... But I still, you know what? Despite that, I still feel as if, like, it was at least worth my attention to watch this. Because, you know what? Maybe you learned something out of this. Maybe I learned something about this. Just about how to give presentations or try to deliver a quote-unquote tutorial. Not that there was any sort of, like, real message behind all this, or anything, whatever, or anything that would have been so easy to have done, or so easy to have worked out a very long time ago. Like, you know, not slapping a an actual doctor. That's probably what you shouldn't have done. So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this reaction video to Chris Chan's autism tutorial. Hopefully the files did not get corrupted this time. Please make sure to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below, and I know what you guys thought of Chris Chan's autism tutorial yourselves. And I hope to love you guys again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye for now.